In 2018, whispers began to spread through the luxurious corridors of Dubai's elite circles about a quiet but astonishing marriage. Sheikh Khalid Al Mansour, a 52-year-old billionaire known for his immense oil wealth and political ties, had taken a bride. But it wasn't just any union. His wife was a 20-year-old Indian girl named Anika Sharma, a name unknown to most before the wedding, but soon to be on everyone's lips. Anika had come from humble beginnings in a small town near Jaipur, raised by modest shopkeepers who struggled each month to make ends meet. Her beauty had always turned heads in her hometown, but her dreams were bigger than the narrow streets she grew up in. Anika's fate changed during a fashion talent contest in Mumbai, where she was spotted by an international scout representing Middle Eastern luxury brands. Within weeks, she was flown to Dubai under a modeling contract. She thought she was going for a few photo shoots. What awaited her, however, was something entirely different. At an exclusive private event hosted by Sheikh Khalid, she stood out among the guests like a rare gem. He noticed her immediately. According to insiders, he became obsessed with her presence, captivated not just by her looks, but by her innocence and grace. Within a month, she was invited again and again to high-end gatherings, charity events, and private dinners. Rumors swirled quickly that Khalid was considering marriage, despite already having 2 wives who rarely appeared in public. In a culture where discretion is power, no one asked too many questions. The wedding itself was a private affair, hidden from headlines and paparazzi. Anika's family was flown into Dubai under tight security, dressed in garments they could never afford. On their own, they were promised a new life, money, safety, and influence. The offer was too good to refuse, and before anyone could understand what was really happening, Anika had signed the marriage contract. She returned to India briefly after the wedding, not as the shy daughter of a shopkeeper, but as a sheikha, clothed in designer wear, escorted by security, and surrounded by wealth that stunned the villagers. Her parents were given a mansion in Jaipur, along with luxury cars and bank accounts filled with unimaginable amounts. Her rise seemed like a dream come true. Indian media tried to get interviews, but the family remained silent. No one wanted to risk offending the powerful man who had changed their lives overnight. To the outside world, Anika's life was a fairy tale, a poor girl from a forgotten town now living in a golden palace. But those closest to her noticed the change. The sparkle in her eyes had dimmed. Her smile seemed forced. While the world celebrated her story as a modern-day Cinderella tale, Anika was already beginning to sense that what she had entered was not a marriage. It was a gilded cage, and the key was no longer in her hands. The fairy tale was only the cover. The real story was far darker and had only just begun. At first, Anika tried to adjust to her new life inside the sprawling palace on the outskirts of Dubai. Surrounded by marble floors, golden chandeliers, and servants who bowed at her presence, she was given every material comfort she could imagine. Designer gowns filled her closets, private chefs prepared her favorite Indian dishes, and luxury cars waited outside for her use. But despite all the grandeur, something vital was missing: freedom. The palace, though breathtaking in beauty, soon began to feel like a fortress. Every movement Anika made was monitored, every word overheard. She was never truly alone, not even for a moment. Within weeks of the wedding, her access to the outside world was quietly cut off. Her personal phone was taken away, replaced with a device monitored by the palace's IT department. Social media accounts she had once used to share photos and connect with friends were deactivated. Her messages to her parents were filtered through assistants, and any conversations were brief, rehearsed, and supervised. The transition was so smooth that it barely raised suspicion at first. Annika, in public, smiled and posed beside her husband at selective events, waving like royalty. But behind closed doors, her voice began to fade. As the weeks turned into months, Annika's mental state started to deteriorate. The palace staff, while respectful, were distant and obedient only to Sheikh Khalid. They followed strict instructions. Never. Allow her to leave the premises alone, never speak freely around her, and never let her contact anyone outside without approval. Her requests to visit India were denied repeatedly, always with some excuse: political tensions, safety concerns, or important family obligations. Slowly, she became isolated in a world where everything looked perfect, but nothing felt real. Annika's health began to suffer. She lost weight, struggled with insomnia, and became withdrawn. Even her vibrant fashion sense dulled, replaced with the modest attire preferred by the Sheikh. Her days were filled with scheduled routines: breakfast at 9 a.m., yoga with an instructor at 11, lessons in Arabic at 2, and quiet dinners beside a husband who barely acknowledged her unless guests were present. Her laughter, once so spontaneous, now felt rehearsed. She was a silent decoration in her own life. Then came the whispers from the staff. Small, quick conversations in corners when they thought no one was listening. A maid dismissed abruptly after allegedly helping Annika sneak in a private call. A driver transferred to another property after suggesting Annika looked unwell. It became clear that even the smallest attempt to help her came with consequences. The environment was suffocating, not through violence, but through complete control. Annika understood she had made a grave mistake. This wasn't the life she had dreamed of when she left India. The palace was not her sanctuary. It was her prison. And every day that passed, she felt less like a bride and more like a possession, carefully displayed but never heard. Her cries for help were silent, but inside, a storm of desperation was quietly building. She was trapped, and she was alone. By early 2021, the atmosphere inside the palace had grown colder, more controlled, and more suffocating than ever before. Annika no longer questioned the restrictions placed on her. She had learned the hard way that resistance came with consequences. She moved like a shadow, floating from room to room under the watchful eyes of security personnel and silent maids. Her routine had become mechanical, her presence ghost-like. But then, something changed. A new face appeared within the palace walls, someone not tied to her husband's loyal circle. His name was Adil, a 27-year-old tech consultant from India, hired by the Sheikh's team to upgrade the palace's cybersecurity systems. The day Adil arrived, Annika saw a flicker of her old life flash before her. Before her marriage, Adil had been her close friend in Mumbai. Some believed they were once in love. Their bond had been genuine and deep, but it was cut short when she vanished from public life. Seeing him again was like seeing a window open in a room long sealed shut. Adil was shocked by her appearance, her thin frame, tired eyes, and muted expressions. He was under strict orders to focus only on the network systems, but he couldn't ignore what he saw. Over the next few days, their paths crossed quietly. In brief glances and subtle nods, a silent connection reignited between them. Annika managed to pass him a small handwritten note, slipped under the keyboard he had been assigned. It contained only a few words. "I need help. I'm not safe." Adil knew instantly that this wasn't a misunderstanding or paranoia. Something was deeply wrong. He didn't respond immediately, knowing that surveillance inside the palace was tight. Every corner had eyes, and any misstep could put Annika at greater risk. After completing his assignment, Adil left the palace, but he didn't leave the situation behind. Once back in his hotel, he began compiling everything he could remember. He backed up data from his time in the palace, including system logs, timestamps, and security camera patterns. He reached out to former palace staff on encrypted platforms, some of whom anonymously confirmed what he feared. Annika had been isolated, silenced, and punished for trying to contact her family. One former housekeeper admitted she had seen bruises on Annika's arms and once overheard a heated argument between her and the Sheikh. Instead of going public immediately, Adil contacted a small investigative journalist collective based in London. These were professionals known for exposing powerful individuals, even at great risk. They agreed to help, and together, they started building a digital archive of evidence. Hidden recordings, flight logs, photos, and witness testimonies were carefully assembled to form the skeleton of a story that could shake the foundations of power in Dubai. But even as this evidence was being collected in silence, something else was happening. Unseen forces were moving. Someone inside the palace had noticed the small changes, the tension in Annika's behavior, and the brief moments she had shared with Adil. She didn't know it yet, but her desperate attempt to be seen had triggered a dangerous chain reaction, and the cost of reaching out for help would soon prove devastating. In July 2021, Dubai's headlines were suddenly filled with the shocking news of Sheikh Annika's untimely death. According to official reports, she had died in a car crash late at night, while returning from a private dinner at a resort near the city's outskirts. The palace issued a brief statement mourning the tragic loss, describing it as an unfortunate accident caused by brake failure. The details were vague, the timeline unclear, and questions were discouraged. No journalists were allowed near the scene, and no photos of the wrecked vehicle were ever released to the public. It all happened too fast and too quietly. Within hours, her death was accepted as fact. There was no funeral, no body presented for public mourning, and no farewell ceremony. Her family in India received a short diplomatic visit from a UAE representative, offering condolences along with a non-disclosure agreement. Her parents, once seen in designer clothes and luxury cars, vanished from the spotlight. Neighbors noticed that their home was no longer guarded, their foreign vehicles gone, and their once booming lives had returned to silence. When asked about their daughter, they gave no comment. Something about their silence felt forced, almost frightened. Adil, still in India, was devastated by the news. He refused to believe the official story. Just weeks before, he had seen Annika in the palace. She hadn't mentioned any plans to leave. She was under tight surveillance and never allowed out at night, let alone alone in a vehicle. He reached out to the journalists in London, and together they began to cross-reference timelines, vehicle logs, and GPS data from the palace's own systems. What they found only deepened the mystery. The car Annika was supposedly in had no record of being dispatched that night. The driver assigned to her had reportedly been on leave. Security footage from that wing of the palace had been wiped clean. Around the same time, one of the journalists involved in the investigation was found dead in a hotel room in Istanbul. The cause was ruled as heart failure, but his laptop and hard drives were missing. It became clear that the reach of those protecting the Sheikh was broader and more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. Another key informant, a former palace maid who had been planning to speak anonymously, disappeared entirely. Her number was disconnected, and her family in Pakistan had no idea where she had gone. Adil realized that the clock was ticking. The palace was trying to erase every trace of Anika's truth, and anyone who had come close to exposing it was now in danger. But the archive he had built was still intact. Before her death, Anika had sent him a final audio recording, a whisper of fear, sorrow, and warning. She said she didn't feel safe, that the walls were closing in, and if anything happened to her, it wouldn't be by chance. That recording, along with the other evidence, had been encrypted and uploaded to multiple secure locations. While the world believed she had simply died in a tragic accident, a much darker reality was unfolding. Her death was no accident. It was a silencing, and the forces behind it were prepared to destroy anything, or anyone, that threatened to reveal the truth. In early 2022, nearly 6 months after Anika's reported death, a storm of digital leaks shook the internet. A collection of files labeled the Dubai Bride Dossier appeared anonymously on a secure whistleblower platform. Within hours, screenshots, voice memos, surveillance maps, and financial documents were being shared globally. The contents painted a disturbing picture. A young Indian woman trapped in a luxurious prison, silenced after attempting to escape, and ultimately eliminated under the guise of a staged accident. The files revealed names, dates, and internal palace communications suggesting coordinated efforts to suppress Anika's voice and cover up her fate. Among the most chilling pieces of evidence was a time-stamped audio clip, Anika's final recording, sent days before her death. In the recording, her voice was soft, but trembling. She described how the walls were listening, how her movements were being watched, and how she feared something irreversible was being planned. She mentioned strange changes in her routine, unfamiliar faces among the staff, and a constant sense that her time was running out. Her final words were haunting. "If this reaches you, please don't let them erase me." The leaks ignited a firestorm. Human rights groups around the world demanded an investigation. International media outlets, initially cautious, began reporting on the story, using aliases and blurred faces to protect their sources. The Indian government, pressured by activists and opposition leaders, made formal inquiries to UAE authorities. But the response was calculated and cold. Officials in Dubai denied all allegations, calling the dossier fabricated and the accusations part of a smear campaign. The palace remained silent, refusing to engage in interviews or press conferences. But the cracks had already formed. Anonymous insiders began contacting journalists, verifying parts of the leaked dossier. A former palace IT technician confirmed the surveillance systems had been altered days before Anika's death. A former driver admitted he had been told to lie about his whereabouts. A deleted flight record resurfaced, showing that a private plane had left Dubai the morning after the alleged accident. Destination unknown. Then came the twist that no one expected. A grainy CCTV image, captured by a roadside camera in Turkey, showed a woman resembling Anika stepping out of a black SUV near a private clinic. The photo was dated 2 days after her supposed death. Though the image was blurry, facial recognition technology gave it a 76% match. Rumors began swirling. Was she really dead, or had she been secretly relocated? Was the accident a smokescreen? To hide her, silence her, or worse, transfer her to another location under a new identity. The uncertainty only deepened the mystery. With no confirmed body, no funeral, and no closure, the truth remained buried under layers of power, fear, and deception. Adil, still in hiding, released a final message to the public. A call for justice, not just for Anika, but for every voice silenced by influence and wealth. The story faded from the headlines over time, but the haunting legacy of Anika Sharma lived on, etched into the hearts of those who dared to seek the truth behind the golden walls of power.